As an FTA, I love using the Raspberry Pi as a field timer or audience display connected to the FTC scoring system. Here are a few tips to help get them set up. If you're not familiar, the Raspberry Pi is a small computer on a board about the size of a credit card with a few ports attached. It's not meant to be very powerful, but it's just powerful enough to run a display connected to the scoring system. It makes a perfect portable addition to your kit if you are an FTA setting up for a competition. There are plenty of resources out there for setting up a Raspberry Pi from scratch, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But I do want to mention that it is important to keep the software up to date. For me, that means regularly running the software updates and occasionally taking the SD card out, wiping it completely, and reinstalling the latest version of the Raspberry Pi OS. You don't necessarily need to go to those lengths, but for me, it's a good way to clear out the cobwebs and make sure I'm up to date. Really what we're trying to do is make sure that the Chromium app is up to date, because the scoring system may use newer features of the web, and Chromium needs to support those features for you to be successful using it as a display. Assuming you have a Raspberry Pi that is all set up and ready to go, there are just two little things that I like to configure to make sure it's successful as a field display or an audience display. The first is screen blanking. If you're not aware, the Raspberry Pi will occasionally, after a period of inactivity, cause the screen to just go black. It's meant to be sort of like a screensaver effect, but we don't want that happening in the middle of a competition, much less in the middle of a match when we're trying to use that display as a timer. Fixing this is really easy. We just need to go to the top left menu, open Raspberry Pi configuration under Preferences, go to the Display tab, and look for the screen blanking option. If you have an older version of the Raspberry Pi OS, it may not be exactly here, and this may be a good indication that you want to do some software updates or start over with a newer version of the OS on your SD card. The second setting I like to change depends on which type of Raspberry Pi you have and how you're going to be using it. As you may know, there are animations that play when we announce the scores for a match, and we want those animations to look very smooth for the audience. Some Raspberry Pis just can't handle it. I have a few Raspberry Pi Model 3s that aren't able to play the animation with any sort of good frame rate. They lag, they skip, and it's generally a bad experience when you're trying to build the excitement of announcing a score. Meanwhile, a Raspberry Pi 4 I have access to seems to handle it just fine, so your mileage may vary. I would encourage you to test it ahead of time if you have the chance. If you have a Raspberry Pi that you think can handle the animation and you want to use it in that way, I like to increase the video memory just a little bit. We can do this by going to the same configuration interface and heading over to the Performance tab. In my case, I have 76 megabytes dedicated to video memory by default. I want to increase this to 128 just to give a little bit of headroom in case RAM is the deciding factor between a smooth and a choppy animation. If you want to see if the animation is likely to work without setting up the scoring computer and trying out a test match, you can go to the Chromium app and type in Chrome://GPU. Any one item on this page isn't going to guarantee that the animation will work or look smooth, but if most of the items on this page are red, that's a pretty good indication that it is not going to work, and you'll probably want to look for a different device to use for that display. With a Raspberry Pi that has the latest software updates and these two configuration changes, I'm pretty confident that it's going to work as a field timer or an audience display connected to the FTC scoring system. But before you run out the door to set up for a competition, make sure you have all of the adapters and cables you need. For example, the Raspberry Pi 4 has micro HDMI ports, so you're going to need an adapter if you intend to plug that into a standard HDMI TV or monitor. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about setting up for a competition or acting as an FTA, let me know what you'd like to learn about.